The final day had to come sooner or later. In this case, it was later.
To the millions of fans watching worldwide, the Dukes of Hazzard was pure, unadulterated Southern comfort. A weekly escape of roaring V8 engines, gravity-defying dirt ramp jumps, and a tight-knit family outsmarting the corrupt local law. But behind the tire smoke and infectious country charm lay a cutthroat corporate battlefield. Executive greed, bitter royalty disputes, and shockingly bizarre ultimatums routinely pushed the cast to their absolute breaking points, turning the set of America's favorite lighthearted comedy into a hotbed of Hollywood mutiny. Here are 10 actors who left the show and all their reasons why they all had to. John Schneider, Bo Duke. By 1982, the show wasn't just a Friday night television ritual. It was a multi-million-dollar retail empire. Yup, fans have to look at the massive explosion of the Dukes of Hazzard merchandising to get how the foundation of Hazzard County cracked. Children everywhere were eating out of Duke's lunchboxes, sleeping on Duke's bed sheets, and playing with die-cast toy versions of the General Lee. At the absolute center of this phenomenon was John Schneider, the charismatic, blonde-haired heartthrob who brought the wild, impulsive Bo Duke to life. Schneider's face was plastered on posters across the globe, driving a wave of consumer capitalism that lined the pockets of studio executives. But backstage, a bitter financial storm was brewing. Schneider discovered a deeply unsettling reality. While Warner Brothers was raking in historical profits from his likeness, his royalty checks amounted to absolute crumbs. Feeling exploited by the studio's accounting practices, Schneider demanded a full, transparent audit of the merchandising revenue. When Warner Brothers stonewalled his requests and refused to adjust his compensation, the young actor decided to play hardball. At the dawn of the 5th season in 1982, Schneider did the unthinkable. He walked off the set of CBS's highest-rated comedy. The gamble was massive. Walking out on a hit show could permanently blackball an actor in Hollywood. Yet, Schneider refused to back down, launching a formal multi-million-dollar lawsuit against the studio for breach of contract and withheld royalties. The network executives, blinded by their own arrogance, genuinely believed the true star of the show was the orange 1969 Dodge Charger. They assumed fans only cared about cars flying through the air and that they could easily replace the human elements of the show. They were catastrophically wrong. The studio quickly scrambled to cast look-alike actors to fill the massive void, but the audience instantly smelled a corporate rat. Ratings plummeted drastically, dropping the show out of the top 10 for the first time in years. Advertisers panicked, and the financial bleeding at Warner Brothers became too severe to ignore. Ultimately, the studio had to swallow its corporate pride, settle the explosive lawsuit, and offer Schneider a lucrative new contract that respected his worth. Schneider's high-stakes mutiny proved forever that the actors, not just the machinery, held the true power in Hazzard County. But Bo wasn't fighting this war alone. Who stood beside him? Tom Wopat, Luke Duke. When John Schneider walked out the door, Tom Wopat was standing right next to him, locking arms in a display of absolute labor solidarity that caught Warner Brothers completely off guard. As the dark-haired, more calculated and mature Luke Duke, Wopat provided the crucial stabilizing counterweight to Bo's wild, impulsive energy. The chemistry between the two on-screen cousins was the lightning in a bottle that powered the entire narrative engine of the series. Like Schneider, Wopat realized that the studio was generating an absolute mountain of cash from merchandising while treating the actual faces of the franchise like low-wage assembly line workers. When the secret backstage meetings between the two stars revealed they were both being systematically shortchanged on toy royalties, Wopat refused to let the studio divide and conquer them. He joined the high-stakes strike at the start of the 5th season, instantly depriving the network of both its primary male leads in one devastating, coordinated blow. The studio's immediate response to Wopat's defiance was a masterclass in corporate arrogance. Executive producers confidently declared that any two handsome actors in tight jeans could slide across the hood of an orange Dodge Charger and pull in 30 million viewers. They quickly modified the script, explaining away Bo and Luke's sudden disappearance by claiming the cousins had left Hazzard County to pursue their dreams as professional drivers on the NASCAR circuit. But television history will forever remember this era as a spectacular failure of executive judgment. Without Wopat's grounded presence and dry wit to balance the show's cartoonish comedy, the entire dynamic of the series collapsed like a house of cards. The replacement actors lacked the natural, effortless, brotherly bond that Wopat and Schneider had spent years cultivating, and fans revolted by tuning out by the millions. As the catastrophic ratings slump threatened to completely destroy the syndication value of the entire franchise, the network's panic transformed into total surrender. Warner Brothers executives realized they were losing far more money in lost advertising revenue than it would ever cost to simply pay their stars fairly. They returned to the negotiating table with a massive slice of humble pie, agreeing to Wopat's financial demands, guaranteeing proper royalty tracking, and giving him top-tier billing. Wopat's calculated gamble paid off completely, cementing his legacy as an actor who successfully stared down a major Hollywood studio and won his dignity back. Byron Cherry, Coy Duke. When Tom Wopat and John Schneider walked off the set, the executive producers faced a terrifying production crisis. Instead of giving in to the star's financial demands, they decided to prove that the human cast was completely disposable. Enter Byron Cherry, a relatively unknown actor who suddenly found himself thrust into the eye of a massive Hollywood hurricane. Cherry was cast as Coy Duke, a newly discovered cousin who conveniently arrived at the Duke farm just as Bo and Luke departed for NASCAR. On paper, it was a dream come true for a struggling actor, a starring role on the #1 comedy on television. In reality, it was a poisoned chalice. From the moment Cherry stepped onto the set for Season 5, he was trapped in a no-win situation. The studio forced him to mimic John Schneider's exact mannerisms, wear identical clothing, and deliver lines that were clearly written for the original blonde heartthrob. The pressure on Cherry was immense, but the coldest reception didn't come from the crew. It came from the audience. Fans of the show felt insulted by the transparent attempt to swap out their heroes with look-alike clones. Cherry received an avalanche of hate mail from viewers who viewed him as a corporate scab trying to destroy their favorite Friday night tradition. Despite the hostile environment, Cherry worked tirelessly, pouring his heart into the physical stunts and trying to carve out a unique identity for Coy within the rigid boundaries set by the writers. He genuinely believed that if he gave it enough time, the audience would grow to love him. That hope was brutally shattered after 19 episodes. The moment Warner Brothers collapsed under the weight of plummeting ratings and settled the lawsuit with Wopat and Schneider, Cherry's fate was sealed. The studio didn't gently transition him out or offer him a recurring role. They discarded him instantly. The original stars signed their new contracts, and Cherry was fired that very same day. His scripts were rewritten on a dime to show Coy leaving Hazzard just as quickly as he arrived. Byron Cherry's brief, chaotic ride in the General Lee ended in the ultimate corporate betrayal, serving as a harsh reminder of how ruthless the television industry could be to those caught in the crossfire of executive greed. Christopher Mayer, Vance Duke. Alongside Byron Cherry, Christopher Mayer was hired to play Vance Duke, the brunette, straight-laced replacement for Tom Wopat's Luke. Mayer was a handsome, capable actor who possessed plenty of natural charisma, but the network didn't want originality. They wanted a human duplicate. The studio launched a massive multi-million-dollar marketing blitz to convince America that Vance and Coy were just as lovable as the original cousins. Mayer's face was quickly pasted onto newly rushed merchandise, and he was subjected to an intense press tour where he had to smile and defend his presence on a show where he clearly wasn't wanted by the fan base. The backstage environment was incredibly tense. The remaining cast members, loyal to Wopat and Schneider, treated the newcomers with distant, professional politeness, rather than the warm family dynamic the show famously projected. Mayer faced the impossible task of recreating the effortless, unspoken chemistry that Wopat had built over 4 years. Every line delivery was heavily scrutinized by nervous directors, and every stunt felt like a desperate test to prove his worth. The ratings for Season 5 plunged like a stone, dropping over 10 share points in a matter of weeks, as millions of families across the country clicked off their television sets in active protest. It wasn't Mayer's fault. He was delivering exactly what the executives asked for, but he was fighting against a cultural bond that could not be manufactured by a corporate casting call. The end came with a suddenness that shocked everyone on set. As soon as the network executives realized that keeping the replacements would bankrupt the franchise's future syndication value, they completely abandoned the Vance and Coy experiment. Mayer was notified that his services were no longer required the moment the ink dried on the original actors' new contracts. There was no farewell party and no respectful send-off for his hard work. Vance Duke was written out in a single rushed scene where it was mentioned he left the farm, making room for Wopat and Schneider to slide back over the hood of the General Lee. Mayer's departure remains one of the most unceremonious firings in television history. Was the studio's war only with the main cousins? Not even close. James Best, Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane. While the network was busy fighting its younger male leads, an entirely different rebellion was brewing among the seasoned character actors who provided the show's comedic heartbeat. James Best, who brilliantly portrayed the bumbling, hyperactive Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, was a Hollywood veteran who had spent decades sharing the screen with legends like Marlon Brando and Jimmy Stewart. He understood the industry inside and out, which made him completely intolerant of the abysmal working conditions he encountered on the set of the Dukes of Hazzard. During the show's second season, the production moved heavily into rural outdoor locations that were frequently plagued by torrential downpours and thick, oppressive mud. While the network was raking in millions, Best and his fellow cast members were expected to work grueling 14-hour days in the elements without the most basic, dignified amenities. The breaking point arrived over something that seemed small on paper, but represented a profound lack of respect from the studio: a clean dressing room. Best grew deeply frustrated with having to spend his breaks trapped in filthy, cramped trailers, surrounded by stagnant mud, with nowhere to properly wash his face, change his clothes, or remove the thick layers of Hazzard County grime between intense takes. When he approached the line producers to demand a modest, sanitary space where he could rest and preserve his health during long shoot days, the studio executives arrogantly dismissed his complaints, assuming a veteran character actor would simply fall in line to keep his paycheck. They grossly underestimated James Best's resolve. In a bold move that stunned the production office, Best went on strike, walking clean off the set and refusing to shoot a single frame of film until his working conditions were upgraded. The studio tried to play hardball, quickly rewriting scripts to explain that Sheriff Roscoe was away at a law enforcement convention, and they cycled through a series of forgettable, temporary guest star sheriffs to fill the void. But the comedic vacuum left by Best's absence was catastrophic. Without Roscoe's iconic high-pitched chuckle, his fan-favorite relationship with his hound dog Flash, and his hilarious, bickering chemistry with Sorrel Book's boss Hogg, the show's signature slapstick comedy completely fell flat. The ratings began to stutter as fans openly rejected the substitute lawmen. Realizing that the entire comedic formula of their hit show depended entirely on Best's precise physical acting, the humbled producers completely capitulated. They built Best a brand new, top-of-the-line dressing room facility and explicitly guaranteed better on-location hospitality. Best returned to the set victorious, proving that even the character actors could break the studio's iron grip. Ben Jones, Cooter Davenport. The legendary backstage battles of Hazzard County weren't always fought over millions of dollars in merchandising royalties or basic working conditions. Sometimes, they erupted over a fierce, uncompromising dedication to artistic authenticity. This was exactly the case for Ben Jones, the fiercely independent actor who brought the beloved, scruffy local mechanic Cooter Davenport to life. Jones wasn't just playing a part. He was a proud Southerner who deeply understood the culture, the style, and the blue-collar reality of the region the show claimed to represent. During the production of the show's turbulent second season, a seemingly minor aesthetic decision spiraled into one of the most bizarre and explosive creative standoffs in the history of primetime television: the infamous Battle of the Beard. The trouble began when network executives and studio producers looked at Cooter's rugged, heavily bearded appearance and decided it didn't fit their sanitized, corporate vision of a family-friendly television show. They ordered Jones to shave off his facial hair completely, demanding a clean-shaven, more mainstream look that would look neater on lunchboxes and toy packaging. Jones was utterly appalled by the mandate. He argued passionately that a hard-working, grease-stained country mechanic living in rural Georgia would absolutely have a beard, and that forcing him to shave would completely destroy the working-class credibility of his character. To Jones, this wasn't just a petty argument about grooming, it was a matter of respect for the audience and artistic integrity. When the stubborn studio executives refused to back down and issued a strict ultimatum, Jones did the unthinkable. He walked off the set. The studio, matching Jones's stubbornness, refused to yield and immediately wrote Cooter out of the scripts, replacing him with an assortment of temporary mechanic cousins. But the show's producers quickly realized they had made a massive tactical error. Fans absolutely adored Cooter's fiercely loyal, rough-around-the-edges persona, and they instantly noticed his absence. The replacement mechanics lacked the natural, deep-seated chemistry that Jones shared with the Duke boys, and the garage scenes felt empty and forced. Letters flooded the network, demanding Cooter's immediate return. Realizing that a dispute over facial hair was actively damaging the show's immense popularity, the studio finally waved the white flag. They invited Jones back to the set, completely dropped the grooming mandate, and allowed him to keep his signature beard. Jones's successful rebellion cemented his status as a folk hero among the cast. Sonny Shroyer, Deputy Enos Strait. Not every major departure from the set of the Dukes of Hazzard was born out of bitter financial lawsuits, striking actors, or creative walkouts. In the case of Sonny Shroyer, who played the incredibly sweet, naive, and fiercely honest Deputy Enos Strait, his departure was sparked by the ultimate Hollywood temptation, the golden promise of his very own television empire. Shroyer's brilliant portrayal of the bumbling, good-hearted deputy, who was secretly in love with Daisy Duke, had turned him into an unexpected breakout star. While Boss Hogg and Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane represented the corrupt, scheming side of the law, Enos was the moral compass of Hazzard County, routinely helping the Duke boys escape Roscoe's traps. By 1980, the network executives at CBS realized that Enos had developed a massive, fiercely loyal fan base of his own. Sensing a massive financial opportunity, network producers approached Shroyer with an incredibly lucrative offer to spin his character off into a brand-new solo primetime series simply titled Enos. The premise was a classic fish-out-of-water story. The sweet, small-town country deputy is suddenly recruited by the Los Angeles Police Department to join a special urban crime-fighting unit. It was a massive professional opportunity that no working character actor could possibly turn down. Shroyer gracefully said goodbye to his Hazzard family at the start of the third season, and the writers crafted a heartfelt send-off episode where Enos packs his bags and leaves for the West Coast. The producers assumed they could easily replicate the magic of the Dukes of Hazzard in a brand new setting. Unfortunately, the television landscape can be incredibly cruel. Stripped of the rural charm of Hazzard County, the thrilling car chases of General Lee, and his beloved chemistry with Roscoe and Daisy, the character of Enos felt completely out of place in the gritty, urban streets of Los Angeles. The spin-off series struggled significantly to find its creative footing, and the ratings quickly plummeted. CBS canceled Enos after a mere 18 episodes, leaving Shroyer suddenly unemployed. However, the producers of the main series knew the original show was desperately missing Enos's sweet innocence. Showing a rare moment of corporate generosity, Warner Brothers welcomed Shroyer back with open arms, seamlessly writing him back into Hazzard County for the autumn of 1982, where he remained until the show's final episode. What happens when the deputy returns, but his replacement refuses to leave? Rick Hurst, Deputy Cletus Hogg. The sudden departure of Sonny Shroyer to his solo spin-off series left a gaping operational void in the Hazzard County Sheriff's Department. Boss Hogg and Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane desperately needed a second, easily manipulated underling to help them execute their daily corrupt speed trap schemes and participate in the endless, high-speed pursuits of the Duke cousins. To solve this sudden casting crisis, the producers introduced Rick Hurst as Deputy Cletus Hogg, the bumbling second cousin of Boss Hogg. Hurst was an exceptionally talented comedic actor who possessed an innate understanding of physical slapstick. Instead of merely copying Enos's naive, sweet-natured persona, Hurst wisely chose to carve out a distinct identity for Cletus. He played the deputy as a frantic, slightly hyperactive, and thoroughly confused relative who genuinely wanted to do a good job but was constantly tripped up by his own staggering incompetence and lack of coordination. Audiences quickly warmed to Hurst's endearing, sweat-soaked portrayal of the inept lawman. His interactions with Sorrel Book and James Best injected a fresh, chaotic energy into the show's comedic B-plots. For 2 full seasons, Hurst was a foundational pillar of the series, seamlessly carrying the heavy burden of the show's daily physical comedy. However, the fragile stability of the Hazzard police force was utterly shattered when CBS canceled Enos on the West Coast. With Sonny Shroyer suddenly free to return to his original role, the executive producers found themselves facing a logistical and financial nightmare. The show's modest production budget simply could not justify the salaries of 3 full-time police officers chasing a single orange Dodge Charger across the back roads. The corporate decision-makers decreed that Enos must be reinstated to restore the show's original golden-era dynamic, which unfortunately left Rick Hurst as the odd man out. Instead of giving Cletus a dramatic, memorable send-off episode, the writers chose to gradually phase him out of the narrative loop. During the chaotic 5th season, Hurst's screen time was severely truncated, and he was quietly written off the show with a brief, throwaway explanation that Cletus had moved on to pursue other employment. Backstage, the departure was heartbreaking, as Hurst had formed incredibly deep, familial bonds with the entire cast and crew. His unceremonious removal served as a poignant example of how quickly supporting actors could be rendered completely obsolete by the shifting tides of network scheduling and corporate budgeting. Mickey Jones, B.B. Davenport. When Ben Jones walked off the set in the middle of his furious, uncompromising battle over Cooter's signature beard, the production office fell into an immediate, white-hot panic. The show's writers and directors were caught in a brutal logistical vice. The daily narrative engine of the Dukes of Hazzard absolutely depended on a local mechanic. Someone had to constantly repair the severe structural damage inflicted upon Boss Hogg's police cruisers, and someone had to secretly source the heavy-duty performance parts required to keep the General Lee airborne. The studio couldn't wait around for Ben Jones to settle his artistic differences with the network executives, so they scrambled to find an emergency replacement who could fill the greasy coveralls on a moment's notice. They turned to veteran character actor Mickey Jones, a mountain of a man with a booming voice, a massive physical presence, and a long Hollywood resume of playing rugged blue-collar outsiders. Mickey Jones was cast as B.B. Davenport, who was hastily introduced to the audience as Cooter's look-alike cousin who had flown into Hazzard County to run the local garage while Cooter was away on unspecified family business. For Mickey, stepping onto that set was the ultimate double-edged sword. On one hand, it was a highly lucrative, high-profile gig on one of the most-watched television programs on Earth. On the other hand, he was walking directly into a creative minefield. The backstage atmosphere during his brief tenure was notoriously awkward and cold. The tightly knit cast and crew were intensely loyal to the striking Ben Jones, viewing the studio's corporate maneuvering as a cold, union-busting tactic designed to prove that the actors were entirely interchangeable. Mickey was a consummate, deeply respected professional who did his absolute best to inject his own brand of rugged humor into the role. But he was swimming upstream against a heavy current of behind-the-scenes resentment. The on-screen results were equally strained. Despite Mickey's best efforts to deliver high-energy comedic performances, the critical chemistry between the mechanic and the Duke boys felt fundamentally off. The easygoing, brotherly shorthand that Ben Jones had spent years building with Tom Wopat and John Schneider simply could not be manufactured over a single weekend. Audiences at home immediately noticed the jarring shift in the show's core dynamic, and the network was flooded with angry letters from fans demanding to know what happened to their beloved Cooter. The experiment lasted for only a handful of tense episodes. The very second Warner Brothers capitulated to Ben Jones's demands and allowed him to return to work with his beard fully intact, Mickey Jones's short-term contract was instantly torn up. He was quietly let go without a single mention on screen, leaving B.B. Davenport to vanish into the deep archives of Hazzard trivia as an emergency corporate band-aid. How deep did the studio's panic run during these strikes? James Hampton, Sheriff Buster Moon. Now, to realize the absolute depth of the studio's panic during the chaotic second season, you have to look at the frantic musical chairs that occurred in the Hazzard County Sheriff's Department. When James Best walked off the set over his atrocious, mud-soaked working conditions and the lack of a proper dressing room, he didn't just leave a vacancy, he ripped out the entire comedic spine of the show. The executive producers were completely trapped. They had a rigid network broadcast schedule to maintain, millions of dollars in advertising revenue on the line, and a script that required a sheriff to actively pursue the Duke boys. The studio's immediate strategy was to launch a revolving door policy, cycling through various temporary lawmen to prove to James Best that he was entirely replaceable. The most notable actor caught up in this corporate dragnet was veteran Hollywood comedian and character actor James Hampton. Hampton was a highly respected industry professional, widely known for his brilliant comedic timing in projects like F Troop and The Longest Yard. He was hastily cast as Sheriff Buster Moon, a clean-cut, straight-laced lawman brought in to run the county with a completely different, no-nonsense philosophy. For Hampton, the gig was a whirlwind. He was thrust onto a high-speed, chaotic set with almost zero preparation, handed scripts that had been frantically rewritten overnight to scrub out Roscoe P. Coltrane's signature dialogue, and told to make it work. The production office desperately hoped that Hampton's natural, built-in charm and established Hollywood pedigree would keep the audience from changing the channel. Instead, the entire experiment exposed just how fragile the show's success truly was. Hampton delivered a perfectly competent, highly professional performance, but the material gave him absolutely nothing to work with. The legendary lightning-fast comedic banter between the sheriff and Sorrel Books' boss Hogg completely evaporated. Without Roscoe's unhinged, childlike enthusiasm, Boss Hogg had no effective comedic foil, transforming the show's lighthearted, cartoonish villainy into something that felt jarringly mean-spirited and flat. The crew on set was anxious, the directors were stressed, and the network executives watched in horror as the raw dailies confirmed their worst fears. You could not simply buy a replacement for James Best. Hampton's stint as the high-ranking lawman lasted for just a single incredibly tense episode titled Arrest Jesse Duke. The second the network heads realized that continuing down this path would permanently alienate their core audience and tank the show's skyrocketing ratings, they abandoned the replacement strategy entirely. They quickly ordered the line producers to give James Best whatever he wanted, resulting in the immediate construction of his legendary mobile dressing room. The moment Best signed his return agreement, Hampton's time in Hazzard County was instantly over. Sheriff Buster Moon was never mentioned again, entering television history as a fascinating 48-hour footnote that proved the studio's corporate arrogance was no match for the irreplaceable magic of the show's original cast. Despite the endless backstage mutinies, high-stakes contract strikes, and chaotic casting shakeups that threatened to derail the series at every turn, the Dukes of Hazzard achieved something truly miraculous. It became an indelible, permanent fixture of American pop culture. The fact that the show survived and thrived, despite losing its main characters, its sheriff, and its mechanic at various points, is a testament to the sheer power of its formula and the fierce loyalty of its fan base. When Bo and Luke returned from their fictional NASCAR stint, the ratings instantly soared back to the top of the charts, proving that the magic lay in the precise, lightning-in-a-bottle chemistry of the original cast. For 7 seasons and 147 episodes, the series dominated Friday night television, generating billions in merchandise sales and syndication revenue that kept the network afloat for years. It proved once and for all that while corporate executives might own the cameras, it is the actors who own the hearts of the audience. The legacy of Hazzard County lives on, not because of the studio's corporate maneuvering, but because a group of talented performers stood their ground, fought for their worth, and refused to let the fire out of General Lee. Their legendary backstage rebellions reshaped television history, demonstrating that true creative magic can never be replaced by a corporate suit. If you loved this deep dive into classic TV history, don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories from behind the scenes.